Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Kaf Chet. We are at the bottom of Kaf Zayin Mabet. I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. We are in the middle of discussing whether the fact that we return a lost object to someone based on signs that they provide, meaning that they show, hey, it's got my name in it, it's got a hole right next to this letter. It's got my brand on it, exactly, et cetera, et cetera. So, that is a basis that we would say that whether the fact that we use signs, as opposed to, just to be clear, what would be the alternative? The alternative would be witnesses. You would need to bring witnesses that said, this item belonged to witnesses that would say, because we don't believe a single witness alone, we need two witnesses to say that the object was belonged to you otherwise. But we say no, one witness is sufficient. And so we pick up on the 11th line from the bottom of Kav Zayin Mabet. It's the middle of the line. It's just before the abbreviation Aleph Taf Lamed Imtim Silomar. But let's take a look. And so it's,
you say one witness is sufficient?
What I did said, not one witness is not sufficient. One witness would not be sufficient.
It was a little fast.
No, okay, no worries. So yes, no, one witness would not be sufficient. The point is, you would need to bring two witnesses. So we pick up on the 11th line from the bottom of Kaf Zayin Mabet. Amar Rava, Imtim Salomar Simanim Lavdel Raisa. One second. Doesn't it have to be biblical? Because if you were going to say that it was not biblical, how would it be possible for the fact, now he's essentially asking from in a practical question, which is, what do we see happening? We see that people give back lost items based on a sign on them. So what basis do we have to return the item if it's not the fact that we say that it's a biblical teaching? So maybe the answer could be Denichale Lemotzi Aveda Denedar Besimanim. The point is that we're doing it because it's a social contract. That if I return the lost object that Stan comes to me and says is his, then I'll be based on a sign. I know when I lose an object, I'm going to be able to get it back based on my giving of a sign. So maybe that's the explanation of why we would do, rabbinically, we would say that you return lost items on that basis. But Amarle Rav Safra points out, I don't understand. That doesn't quite work. At the end of the day, when I return, can a person do something for himself, something good for himself, with money that doesn't belong to him? You're not allowed to. And yet, when I give it back to Stan, who may or may not be the rightful owner of the lost object, I'm really doing something for myself. I'm setting myself up to get my things based on a sign as well.
Isn't it a mitzvah too?
Yeah, well, it's a mitzvah, but the question is maybe it's a mitzvah only if you come to me with witnesses. And if you don't come with witnesses, then you don't get it back. So that's the situation. So as a result, we're going to modify Rava's original answer. Ella, and we are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up. Fourth word from the end of the line.
What is he doing? What is he doing for letovato? What is he doing for himself? He's returning this object to somebody else on the expectation that in the future he would get something back.
Yes,
but that's a davar shelo ba'olam.
Interesting question. That can a hana that's a davar shelo ba'olam be a hana? And the answer may be that maybe even if it's a davar shelo ba'olam, which according to some people you can't purchase or sell, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't tovas hana, a benefit for it. And that clearly the Gemara is assuming that there's a benefit, that the person who found the lost object, in this case, when it's me who found Stan's lost object, or at least the object that Stan is claiming, and now when I return it to Stan, I don't know that Stan really owns it, but I'm giving it to Stan on the basis of that when I lose something, I'll be able to get it back based on signs. So there's something in the future that I'm going to be getting. That's the benefit but I'm getting that benefit based on something that I don't own, and I'm giving to somebody who may not be the owner. So that's the question. So as a result,
there's another possibility here that they aren't considering, which is that for property, the rabbis have the power to change ownership for property for the benefit of society, but they're not taking that approach here.
That is correct. They are not using the fact that of Hefker based in Hefker, the concept that based in can effectively make ownerless. It's a good question as to why not. Maybe that will be part of the bottom line, because in the end here, we're going to end up saying we're unclear on the question of whether or not there's a biblical prohibition or not. So that could be partially behind that. But you're absolutely right that they are not making that particular point. But let's take a look and we'll see now how Rava slightly adjusts his point. So now he says, Ella nichale labala veda lemehav simanim umishkale. No, let's not focus on the finder. Let's focus on on just the person who lost the object. And the person who lost the object is willing to live in a world in which he won't necessarily get his things back, because people, based on the concept of people giving signs. Because a person knows he doesn't have witnesses for his lost object. And he's going to say, nobody else is going to know the clear signs that are associated with this, the signs that are most identified with this lost object. So I'm going to give the best signs, and as a result, I'm going to get the object. So the implication is, again, that there is this social contract where the loser of the object is always going to benefit as a result of the rules that we institute. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because Elaha Ditanan, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Echad Halova Mishlosha, Yachzir Lulova, that when one person borrows from three different people and you have those contracts all together, so then we'll give the contracts to the borrower, because the borrower is clearly holding on to them. However, Shlosha Shalavu Me'echad, when three people borrowed from one person in the three different contracts, Yachzir Lamalva, then you give it to the lender, because presumably the lender was the one who was holding these three documents. But Nicha Leilaloba Adure Lamalva, but does the borrower, is the borrower benefiting based on the return to the lender? Of course not. That this obviously shows that we're using an identifying mark, namely an identifying fact that the point is that they're listed in this way, all three have the same lender on the document. So as a result, that's why, how can you say that we're doing this for the benefit of the person who lost it? Clearly, in that case, if the borrower was the one to have lost it, he would certainly not be benefiting. So Amar Lay,
but we don't know who lost it.
That's true, and exactly that's essentially the point that we're making, going to make right now. Amar Lay, Hasam Svarahu. There, it's logical that we're giving it back to the person that we're giving it back. Echad Alova Mishlosha Yachzer Lalova. That when you have one person who borrowed from three different people, so then we return it to the borrower. The Gabi Lova Shchiche, because that's going to be a lot more likely. The Gabi Malva Lo Shchiche, and by the lender, it won't be likely to have three loan contracts that are with two other lenders and one with himself. So Shma Mina Milova Nuffle. So we say that it must have fallen from the borrower. So bottom line is that it doesn't make sense. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense to return it that way. So as a result, that case doesn't undermine our current approach that that says that it's all based on what the person who lost the object would want. So now we turn to Kafchaf Amud Aleph. Ela haditnan matzah tachrich shel shtaros, that if you find a roll of shtaros, of contracts, debt contracts, aguda shel shtaros, or a bundle, where they're stacked up of contracts, hareze yakser, you should return it. So hachinami denicha leila lova dure leila malva. In that situation, is the borrower going to be happy that you returned it to the lender? Of course not. And then maybe it was the borrower who lost it. Ella amarava simanan de oraisa. Meaning the point is that one of the people who may have lost it is not going to be happy about the situation. And so therefore it can't be that we're sort of like having a total contract, a social contract in this situation, because if you were to ask borrowers what they would want, they would say you need to have witnesses, because any borrower is going to be the most likely loser if all you have to do is bring simanim, if all you have to do is bring signs. And so as a result, that's why it can't be that we're just doing some kind of social contract, because no borrower would want to participate in that. So Ella Amar Rava, that's interesting because he could answer, yeah, no bar, but sometimes people are borrowers and sometimes people are lenders, but we don't answer that. Rather, remarkably, Ella Amar Rava, Siman and Del Raisa. Actually, all right, you asked a good question. I don't have any other better answers. So now I'm going to tell you, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe signs are all biblical, and that is the basis that we can return them. Diksiv, after all, it says in the Torah, that you should hold on to the item until your brother seeks it out. But 1 second, how in the world are you supposed to give it back before he comes and asks for it? You can't give back. I can't give Stan's object back to Stan before he comes and tells me it's his. It doesn't make any sense. So Ella,
maybe you're supposed to machriz.
Yes, well, yes, of course you're supposed to machriz. You announce it, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But the point is that even when I announce it, the point is I can't give it back to the person until he seeks it out, until he asks for it and claims it. So Ella darsheyu im ramayhu o eno ramay. But the point is that the point that why it references the person who seeks it out, it's telling me I need to check out Stan when he comes and makes the claim. Is he a tricker or is he not? Is he a guy who's going to? Yeah, exactly. Is he somebody who would try and do it to steal or not? So la b'simanim, and isn't that talking about with Stan trying that the way I will check out whether Stan is somebody who is tricker is by him giving me signs? So shma mina, actually that shows that this must be that signs are from the Torah. So Amar Rava imtim zalomer siman deoraisa. Now, if you say that signs are deoraisa, well, 1 second, Rava was the one who just said that Ella Amar Rava siman deoraisa. So the Gemara immediately questions this imtim zalomer siman deoraisa because it says imtim zalomer, quote unquote, ha pashitle siman deoraisa. We just concluded that simanim are deoraisa. No, mishum de'ika lameimar kedushanina. No, the point is that we can answer as we said previously, because if you remember back to yesterday, I believe that we answered that we had this same drasha yesterday, but we said that no, it could be that when we say that you need to check out whether the claimant is a deceiver, it means, as Rashi says, 4th line in the top from the top of Kochet Amud Aleph, kedashaninan be'edim. We said that it could be that when we say that you have to show that the person who's claiming it is not a deceiver, it means that he claims it with witnesses. So as a result, so now we go back to Rava's question. So or actually Rava's statement that if we assume that simanim, that signs constitute a biblical indication of ownership, so simanim is simanim yaniach. If 2 people make a claim for something, we're going to now have a series of multiple people making claims for things. That's the bullets on the that we have listed on the screen. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, a total of 10 different situations where you have two people claiming something. So situation number one is two people. I provide signs. So then yaniach, they don't. You hold on to it. You don't give it to either of them. Simanim be'edim yunasin lebala edim. But when you have one person with signs and one person with witnesses, clearly you give it to the witnesses because witnesses is stronger than signs. What about if you have signs on one side and signs with an additional witness on the other side? No, one witness is nothing. So as a result, you effectively ignore it, and you leave it to the side and you don't give it to anybody. If one set of witnesses claims that, hey, I saw Stan weaving this garment, and a second witness says, I saw Moshe drop this garment. So then, Tanasein le'edei nefila, you give it to the ones who is supported by the witnesses about the falling. Da'amrin and Zabuni Zabna umeinish achrina nafal. That even though Stan is claiming that it belongs to him, the fact that Moshe is able to provide witnesses that it fell from him, that shows that he must have been the one who bought it from Stan. So midas arko, midas rachbo, when it comes to one person offering the measure of the length of the document, the length of a garment, and another offering the length of the width of the garment, tanazil midas arko, you give it to the one who says the length of the garment. Why? The midas rachbo she'ure kamishayar la kad mechase because the width of a garment that you can tell from somebody who's wearing it. So if I saw you wearing this garment that you lost, I can now easily claim the garment by giving the width because I saw it on you. Omidas arko lo mishtarla. But when it comes to a garment where you have to measure the length, where it's from front to back, and then it's much harder, especially if it's a wrap, and usually that's what we're talking about, some kind of wrap. Then the length of the garment is a much harder measurement to measure. So midas arko, umidas rachbo, umidas gamav. Now, what happens if one person offers the length and the width, and the other person offers gamav? Now, it's not completely clear what gamav is. It could either be the area, because it's sort of like the letter gimel, gamma, that is a line in two directions, or it could be the sum of the length and the width. So, no, we're going to get to weight in a moment, but that right now we're doing gamav. So Yunasin Lamidas Arko Virachbo. So the person who gives the detailed measurements, both the width and the length, is going to be the one that we give it to, because that person knows both of them, and that's a clearer sign for whom to give it to. What
That's
about
a Greek letter? So this
what?
word gam is a Greek letter, right?
Yes.
Or it's a Greek letter like a chaf, like a dalet? No, what is it?
Like a dalet. It's like a dalet.
Yeah.
And so as a result, that's sort of an indication of both the width and the length. Now, the question is does that mean area or does that mean the sum of the two? But it doesn't really matter because either way, if you have the width and the length, you can get that number. But the point is that if you can't give the individual pieces, so we're going to give it to the person who has the individual pieces because that's a greater level of detail. Midas arko, umidas rachbo. If one person has the width and the length, umidas mishkalosav, and another person has the weight, so then yinasul umidas mishkalosav. Then we're going to give it to the person who has the weight. And we saw in Tosfos a couple of days ago, sometime last week, I think we saw, or maybe it was on Monday. Now that I gave Monday, I'm not sure which of them, but I'm pretty sure we talked about it in Shir. The reason this was, this was maybe it was on the Mishnah, so it was like last week. The bottom line is that Why is it that the weight is stronger? The weight is stronger because people don't weigh their garments. So as a result, if you know the weight of a garment and you know it precisely, that's going to be pretty good proof that it belongs to you. Okay, so next, so we now change topics slightly to talk about divorce documents. So we've done the first 7. Now we're on number 8. Who omer simane agay, he omeret simane get. If both of them offer signs of that are marks on the get, so then yunasin la. Then you give it to her. And Rashi gives us a good explanation for why that would be the case. It's 1 to 4 lines up from where it says Mishnah in the Rashi. Yunasin la shehu nas no v'yodea simanim, because it must be that he gave that. Of course, because he gave it to her, he knows the signs. Aval he, when it comes to her, the wife, im lo nasnu, if she didn't get it, la nasnu la ma'hechan yada. How would she know the signs that are on the document itself that are not going to be obvious from the outside? So in fact, now we're going to clearly make that point. Now, what kind of signs are you talking about? If you just tell me that you know the width and the length of the particular get document, maybe she saw it while he was holding it. Meaning, if you say, "Oh, that get, it was on 8.5 by 11," right? So nobody is going to believe you that I got the measurements exactly right. No, so that the point is that you may have just seen it. No, the point is that she was able to say there was a hole in the document next to this particular letter. So who omer simani hachut, he omeret simani hachut. What if they both have the sign of the string that wrapped that tied up the get document? Yunasin la. Then again, we give it to her. And the Gemara asks, 1 second, but what kind of sign does she have? Because if she's telling you the color of it, that it was white or red, the Dilma Bahadi maybe she thought when her husband was holding it. Ella b'midas arko. No, it's that she knows the precise length of the tied string, and that is not going to be something that is easy to measure based on the fact that it's tied. So who omer? Okay, so that's the 9th case, and now the final case. Who omer b'chafisa? V'hi omer is b'chafisa. If they both say, "Hey, it was in a bag," then who gets it? Yunasin lo. Then you give it to him because my timer. What's the reason? Made the yada. A wife knows how her husband stores things. The Koma de Islay, she knows that everything he has, he puts it in a bag. And so as a result, now this skin bag that he's going to use for this, that's not a sign for her because she would know about that already. So the bottom line is that if it's a good sign, we'll give it to her. If it's not a good sign, if it doesn't show that she actually got it, so then it's actually unclear. The simple read of this Gemara suggests that it maybe would actually go to the husband, but it could be that even if she doesn't have the sign, we can't necessarily give it to the husband, especially if the wife is claiming it. But there we have it. So that is our list of 10 items where we're unsure, where 2 people come and make a claim, and we indicated the winner in those situations. So now we have our next Mishnah, and the next Mishnah details the duration of the obligations of someone who finds a lost object that he must return it. Okay, so how long do you need to announce the fact that you lost something? Until his neighbors know. And Rashi points out, yes, it's unclear, as is often the case, it's unclear in the Mishnah which neighbors we're talking about. So Rashi tells us, Befarish b'Gemara, we're going to see it in the Gemara, and you know what? We'll see that in a moment. That's going to be the first item of business for the Gemara to deal with. Divrei Rebbe Meir, that's what Rebbe Meir says. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Shlosh Regalim. You have to do it for 3 holidays. It's not subjective, it's objective, right? We're going to give you a specific time period. But Akara Regal Akara, and you know what? It's not just 3 holidays. It is 3 holidays, and then after that last one, Shiva Yamim. You have to wait another 7 days. Why? so that everybody could go back to their home, Shlosha, and that takes 3 days, V'yachzor Shlosha, and then come back another 3-day journey, V'yachris Yom Echad. And then he goes out and he announces the fact that takes 1 day to announce the fact that, hey, I lost the item, and this is what I have, and these are my this is my sign that I got it. Okay, so Tana Shkena Aveda. So we said that when we reference the neighbors of the lost object. So my Shkena Aveda, what do we mean by that? Because if we mean the neighbors of the person who actually lost the object, the only way you can know who the neighbors are is if you know who lost the object. And if you know that, go and give it back to him. So that can't be it. You have to announce the place where, the neighbors of the place where the lost object was found. So that's the key, is to go around to where the lost object was found and to make sure that the people in that neighborhood all know that there was something found, the lost there, and that you had found it. So that is Rebbe Meir's approach. Rabbi Yehuda again said that we wait 3 holidays. So what does that mean? So
how do you know where the object was actually lost? Say there was a wind or a storm or a water.
It means where. You're absolutely right. It means where it was found. And if I probably should have read it more carefully, because it says Ela Shcheni Makom Shenimtseis Bo Aveda, where you found the Aveda. That's where you go by, which we assume is the place where you lost it, but of course we don't know for sure. But that's where the announcing happens, according to Rebbe Meir, and that you need to make sure that the people around where the item was found know that a lost item was found there.
But even in that case, it could have arrived by a wind or by rain.
100%, absolutely. That also highlights the fact that this is one of the reasons that maybe Rabbi Yehuda doesn't focus just on the neighbors in the particular area, but rather he focuses on basically going through the seasonal year and making sure that the person, because if the person isn't from the neighborhood, maybe they lost it while traveling to Yerushalayim on one of the 3 holidays, the pilgrimage holidays. So that was what Rabbi Yehuda said. Now, Rabbi Yehuda gave us only 3 days to travel the width and breadth of Israel. But 1 second, is it really true that 3 days is sufficient? Because we have a Mishnah that says that we start praying for rain. The Tanakama says on the 3rd day of Mar Cheshvan, and Rabbi Gamliel Omer B'Zayinbo, that we begin on the 7th day, and that's in fact the halacha in Eretz Yisrael. We begin to say Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGeshem on the 7th day we begin to say Mori. We begin to say the same Tal Umatar Livracha on the 7th day of Mar Cheshvan. So, and why do we that? Because Tes B'Zayinbo, Tes Vav Ach Yom Achar Hachag. Because we want to wait 15 days after the holiday. And so Kidei Shiagia Acharon Shebe'eretz Yisrael L'Nahar Prat, because we want to give everybody a chance to get all the way to the Euphrates, and that's the that's the distant border of the country. And so as a result, that shows that we allow that it takes 15 days. So Rav Yosef Lo Kasha Kan B'Mikdash Rishon Kan B'Mikdash Sheni. So when we said that there were 15, that you need 15 days to get to the very edge, B'Mikdash Rishon D'Nefishe Yisrael Tuva, when we had lots of Jews and therefore they were very spread out, Tiksiv Behu Yehuda V'Yisrael Rabim Kechol Asher Al Hayam Larov, because as it highlights in Melachim Aleph, Perek Daled, Pasuk Kaf, that there were the Jews were lots of people, and so as a result, in Kulei, we needed more time. We needed 15 days. But in the second Beit Hamikdash, when there weren't as many Jews, when we said that the entire congregation was 42,360. So then, Lo Bein and Kulei, we didn't need that much time to get to the border. So Amar Le Abaye, but Abaye.
But the contemporary accounts from late Second Temple times report humongous crowds at the festivals in Jerusalem, and the city was much, much larger than it ever was in First Temple times. Even in the time of Ezra, it was larger than in First Temple times.
So this ties to a philosophical point that the Gemara makes, which is the fact that the Gemara is highlighting, even if what you're saying is true, Charlie, the Gemara is trying to highlight the fact that many people chose not to return to Eretz Yisrael in the second for the second Beit HaMikdash, that many of them remained in Bavel and views that as a very negative thing. And so as a result, I think it's in part to emphasize that they're emphasizing that the second Beit HaMikdash was much smaller from a communal perspective. But you're absolutely right that, it's worth also noting the fact that the structure itself was considered bigger. It was taller, it was wider, taller, which is why there was a curtain instead of a wall. In any event, Amar Le Abaye, right. So Abaye highlights that this can't be that you're talking about the scope of where people were settled changed. Because v'haksib v'yeshu kohanim v'haleviyim hamashorim shoarim v'chol Yisrael ba'arehem, that everybody returned and settled in their cities. So the implication is, and Rashi makes it clear, 1, 2, 3, 5 lines under the Gemara reference in Rashi, v'yeshu kol Yisrael ba'arehem v'aval gavta porsahavu, that even if they were fewer, they were still spread out in all of the cities. And so as a result, there was people that were just as far away as before. So as a result, it can't be that the scope, that the distances changed. The cave and Dahachi,
they were still walking the same distance. Is the supposition here that there were so many people that the actual journey took longer because of the traffic jam?
Well, that we're going to get to that in just a moment. But right now, the point is that we don't actually say that, because you're right. We could have said that. But as a result of this question, we're going to come up with an alternative explanation. And say instead, maybe we would say the exact opposite. Mikdash Rishon Dinafishi Yisrael too, because in the first Beit HaMikdash, when there were many more Jews in the land of Israel, the mitzvahs Alma. So as a result, there would be so many people would come together. So umishtake shayarasa de azle ben biyama ben belelia. You would be able to find a caravan that's going to where you are going every day and every night. So lo be'in and kulihai, and so as a result, you didn't need to wait for the next bus that was only a week and a half later. But v'stagi b'tla so yomen. So as a result, 3 days was sufficient. But mikdash sheni, in the second Beit HaMikdash, Zilona Vishi Yisrael Tuba, where the Jews weren't as numerous, Delo mitzvah Alma, and wasn't so that as the people, the rest of the whole world wasn't coming to the Beit HaMikdash. Lo mishtake shayarasa to Azle ben biyamama ben belaylia. You wouldn't be able to find people traveling all the time. So be'inan kulihai, and so that's why you would need 15 days. So maybe it would take some time until you find a group of people that are traveling in the right direction. So Rava offers a third possibility that has nothing to do with the Beit HaMikdash. Lo shna b'mikdash rishon, lo shna b'mikdash sheni. It's not about the Beit HaMikdash. It's about lo hitrichu rabbanan ba'aveda yoser midai. Is that there's only so much that we're going to obligate the finder to do. We do not want to force the finder of a lost object to engage in such efforts that it's going to force him to stay for effectively 4 weeks. Because remember what the ramification would be, right? You would need to give 15 days to go out, 15 days to come back, and 1 additional day. That's 31 days. It's a whole month. So as a result, we're only going to say that you only get 7 days. So especially because you did announce it 2 other times previously. So Amar Ravina Shma Mina Ki Makris Glima Makris. That when you see Ki Makris Glima Makris. That when you make an announcement, you say what it is that you found. You found a garment. Because if you tell me that in fact all you do is announce, hey, I found something that somebody lost, you have to give people at least 1 additional day so that they could go and get back to where they were and investigate and look at what they have. You can imagine that obviously it would take us more than a day to go through all of our possessions, how blessed we are with all the things that we have. Elishmamina glima makros. So it must be that you would announce that it was a lost garment, shmamina. And so as a result, Ravina says, this is a definitive proof that we have to say this. And Rashi says, middle 1, 2, 3, about 15, 17 lines up in Rashi, middle low from the bottom in the narrow lines, middle low yavile the rabbanan shahot ela halicha b'chazara. From the fact that the rabbis only gave time for going and coming, not for any time to actually investigate your objects, that shows that it must be that was what was announced was the nature of the item itself. Rabba Amar Afil Tema Avida Telmakros. No, you can even say that they announce that all you do is announce a lost object, and it's consistent with his last answer. Lo Hitrichu Rabbanan Kaveda Yoter Midai. The rabbis didn't want to burden anybody so much. So yes, it's 3 days, 3 days, and 1 day, but that's because we wanted to just give some amount of time, but we're not going to give a forever amount of time. So
it seems like, I'm sorry, it seems like if I understood this correctly, that he's giving the person who machris makes this announcement for a year, over a year and 7 or 15, 7 days, whatever. So he's holding that object for, because it's 3 regalim, right?
Yes, 3 regalim. So it won't necessarily be a full year, right? It could be as little as 7.5 months or 7 months and a little bit, right?
Okay, but it could be a year. But
it could absolutely, it could be a year. It could be just exactly a year, right? If you find it just after the holiday. So, but the bottom line is that we'll see in fact, you know what, Ken? I think that the Gemara's quoting of the next brisa is to address exactly your point, because Tana Rabbanan, Regel Rishon, Omer Regel Rishon. On the first holiday that you make the announcement, you need to say, this is the first holiday I'm making this announcement. Regel Sheni, Omer, Regel Sheni. And on the second holiday, you say, this is the second holiday I'm making the announcement. Regel Shlishi, Omer Stam. And on the third holiday, you don't announce which holiday it is, because the point is by announcing it without the date, it will be clear that it's the third holiday. Now, why not have the person say that it's a third holiday? We don't want to get any confusion between second and third, because if the person thinks that he said sheni when he said shlishi, well, then we're going to be worried that the person's going to think that he has another opportunity to check out his possessions and then come back. But sheni nami. So, all right. So then why not worry about the second one? Maybe he'll confuse it with the first one, meaning he'll hear a number, but he won't be clear as to what number. He'll just know that the guy said more than the lost object. Because at the end of the day, we're not worried about confusing between the first time and the second time, because there's still going to be another time. And what people don't get confused is when you say something without giving any date, without giving any number. And so the point is, Ken, that yes, you're absolutely right that it could be a year or more that the person is going to hold on to that. But sometimes you need that final warning in order to force people to pay attention. And so that's what is going on. And that's why we need to give some additional days at the very end, because we want to give the person the opportunity to have finally paid real attention. And so as a result, that's why we're going to have to give the 7 additional days, but we can sort of make it like a compromise according to Rava, and according to the other view, it would be in order to get to wherever you need to get to.
So I just went to Google Maps to try to find out how long it takes to walk the length of Eretz Israel. From Jerusalem to Eilat is 118 hours, 521 kilometers. I'm sorry, from Mount Hermon to Eilat is 118 hours. 68 of those hours are from Jerusalem to Eilat, and 50 of those hours are Jerusalem to Mount Hermon.
So there you go. So that's very consistent with 3 days.
3 hours.
Three days of walking, because that's 3 days of walking.
Yeah.
The 72 hours. Now, of course,
Yeah.
you need to get stop for sleeping, but
Right.
And of course, it's not clear whether well, some people may be riding a horse or something, so or some kind of animal that may be a little bit faster or not.
Yeah.
But in any event, okay.
Yeah,
So
there even a donkey's going to be faster.
yeah.
And there's also the question. Eilat is, according to many opinions, not really part of the land of Israel, but it was settled by Jews after David HaMelech conquered it, and also that area was conquered by the Hashmonaim.
Okay.
So the borders in the Second Temple time, by the end of the Second Temple time, or at least before the Roman conquest, were pretty much the same as they were under King David, with the exception of Syria, which is always given a separate status.
Yeah. Okay. You should go off. All right. So Tanur Rabbanan. So now we're going to another brisa that sort of goes through and touches on a topic that's related to what Charlie just said, which is what happens after the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed. So Tanur Rabbanan, Barishona kol shematza aveda hayamakros alash shlosha regalim va'acha regel acharon shivas yamim. So originally you would announce for 3 holidays, and then another 7 days after the third holiday, so that there would be 3 days to go back home and double check your stuff, and then 3 days to come back, and then 1 day to announce it. But once the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, that it should be rebuilt speedily in our times. Hiskinu, the rabbis set up, you should make the announcement in shuls and in batei midrashim, in the whole study halls, in batei midrashim. But when the people who would take things away became common, and we'll see what that is in a moment. So you would then inform, the person would inform the neighbors and the people that they know, and that would be sufficient. And what does that mean, that the people who would take it away became, by force on some level, would become common? Because these are talking about people who would say, the lost object belongs to the king. So now we have a story that relates to that. Rabbi Ami Ashkach Udia Dinari. He found a vessel that held some dinarim. So Chazia Hahu Barnash the Mirtas. So a certain person saw that Rav Ami was afraid that he was and presumably that the person would take it away. And this the person we're assuming is a Roman person. So Amrlay, and he said to him, Zil Shkolan Afshach, don't worry about it. You can take it for yourself. You found the money. Delav Parsayanan. We're not like the Persians. Amri Avidu Tilamalka, that says that everything that was lost belongs to the king. So Tanur Rabbanan, Evan Toen Hais of Yerushalayim. So we taught another brisa that there was a special stone, a stone where people would make claims in Yerushalayim. Kol Misha Avdalo Aveda Nifnish Lasham. Anybody who lost something would go there. Kol Misha Motza Aveda Nifnish Lasham. And anybody who found something would go there.
Lost and found box.
Yeah, exactly. Lost and found. Well, it's a lost and found stand, because you're not going to put the item away. But yes, basically, it's like a marketplace for lost and found items. Zeomedu makris, zeomed nosen simanim vinotla. So one would get up and make announcements, and one would get up and say, give the signs. Zohi shishaninu, and that it was in connection with that stone that we taught. And the Rashi tells us in the second line of Rashi, Meseches Tanis, and in Meseches Tanis, Choni Amagal, in the stories of Choni Amagal. So what was it that we said about that? Choni Amagal had said the words, im nimchas eben hatoan. Go see if the stone of this claiming stone has been nimchas. Now, what is nimchas? Im nichases the gesham. Has it been covered by the rain? Because Choni Hamagal, of course, got the name because he drew a circle and said he wouldn't leave the circle until it rained. And he wanted to make sure that it rained sufficiently. And so as a result, the third line of Rashi, im nichsas b'geshamim, if in fact this stone was covered in rain, shegavhu geshamim lamala himenu, that the rain had rained so much that it covered it, yesh geshamim yoter midai. Well, then it would be more than what we need. It would be more than actually appropriate. And then I would pray that it would stop. That's what Choni Amagal would do. So the point is that this is we can see that it's not only in connection with claiming, but it was also relevant in another story as well. So that leads us to our next Mishnah. And in the next Mishnah,
before you go on, the thing about the Persians claiming that lost diamonds belong to the king reminds me of the law in the United States about abandoning bank accounts, unclaimed tax returns, uncashed lottery tickets going back to the government.
Yes, yes, that's interesting. That is exactly right. Although, you can find in unclaimed funds, you can make those claims for a long time. So,
right.
So if you, it's always worthwhile to check those out, especially for all your family members, because you never know when something will turn up. All right. So
I think uncashed lottery tickets become
yes, uncashed lottery
after a year.
Definitely after a year they go back into the pot. So Amar Esaveda. So now what happens if the person who's claiming it says what the object is, velo Amar Simoneha, but he doesn't say the signs, lo yitain lo, you don't give it to him. Vaharamai, and if you know the person is dishonest, is a tricker, afal pi sha'amar Simoneha, even if the person does say the signs, lo yitain lo, don't give it to him. Shneamar ad drosh achicha oso, until your friend checks it out. Ad shetidrosh achicha. Im Ramayhu, im Eino Ramay. You have to check out your brother to see whether he is honest or not. That's exactly what we saw, and indeed, Rava used this as a proof that signs are d'oraisa. So Itmar. So once again, we said Rav Yehuda Amar Aveda Tamakris. We have this debate. We saw this debate once a little earlier between Ravina and Rava, but now we're sort of going back. It's Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman who had this debate as well. So Rav Yehuda says that we announce the lost object. We don't say what it was. Rav Nachman Amar Gulim Makris, and Rav Nachman says we announced that it was what the object was. The object was a garment. Rav Yehuda Amar Avedita Makris, Di Amrat Gulim Makris, Chashin Ramai. Because we're worried that if you say that it was a garment, we're worried about people who are trickers. They'll come up with some kind of sign and guess the sign. Rav Nachman Amar Glima Makris. Rav Nachman says, no, we announced this garment, L'Ramai Lo Chashin, and we're not worried about dishonest people. Because if that's your concern, in the end, there's no way you could do anything if we're concerned about people who are tricking. So Tanan. So now, 1 second, what about our Mishnah? Our Mishnah said, Amar Esa Veda Velo Amar Esa Simuneha. If you say the object but you don't say the signs, you shouldn't give it to him. Now, now, if you just announce the fact that something was found and you don't say what it is, that's what our Mishnah is telling us. Even though the person says, oh, I lost the garment, when he's not able to give the identifying marks, you don't give it back to him. But if you're going to tell me as Rav Nachman does, that you say exactly what was lost, Amar Ihu Glima, but Amar Ihu Glima, 1 second, this guy's going to say Glima, and that guy's going to say Glima, and now he's supposed to get it? Sricha Lamemar, do I need to tell you, Kilo Amar Simanim, that if he doesn't give the signs, Lo Mahadrina, you don't return it to him? Of course not. That's so clear. Amar Rav Safra, so Rav Safra explains, La'olam glima makros. No, really, it could be that this is not a counterproof to Rav Nachman, and it could be that you announce the fact that you found a garment. And Amar Ihu glima v'Amar Ihu simanim. That when the person says that he found the garment, it says we're talking about where he found it with identifying marks. Umay lo Amar Esminah. What's that? But the Mishnah said that he did not say identifying marks. He didn't say the signs. So lo Amar Simanim move hakim duda. The point is he just said general signs, signs like what color is the item, or some things like that, things that are not very detailed and specific. Again, the object of the example of a very specific sign is a hole next to a particular letter in the particular document. So okay, so that is so now we've explained how this can be consistent with both Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman. And finally, we now quote one more brisa of Haramai Aval Pisha Amar Esmuneha. We say we don't give it back to the person who has signs if he is a tricker. So Tana Rabbanan, Barishona, Kol Misha Avdolo Aveda, Hayanosin Simon Vinola. Originally, anybody who found anything, we would give signs and we would give it back. Mishirabu Haraman. But once it became clear that so many people were playing games with this, his Skinush Yehu Amrinlo, we would have to tell people, Save Have Edim Delavramayat. You have to be told. If you want to take it, you need to come and bring witnesses that you are an honest person. Like the father of Rav Papa. So Irkas lay Kamara Ashkachua. He had lost a donkey and somebody found it. Also, Kame de Rabba Barapuna, and the Rav Papa's father came in front of Rabba Barapuna. Amrle Zil Isu Zade de Lavramayat. Told, go get witnesses that you're not a dishonest person, and then you can take the donkey. Also, I say Sadi. So he brought witnesses. Amr lahu Yusun Bey Duramayhu. So the Rabba Baravuna said to the witnesses, do you know? And again, the implication, the intention of the question is, do you know whether he is a dishonest person, implying, is he a dishonest person? Amrulay, but they understood it as, do you know whether he is a dishonest person? So Amrulay ain. So they answered yes. So boy, that led to confusion. So Amrlahu Ana Ramai Ana. So 1 second, Rav Papa responded and bursting out, what, you're saying I'm dishonest? So Amrlahu Ana Lavramai At Kamrina. No, they said, we know you're not a dishonest person. So Amar Rabba Baravuna, Mistabra lo maisi inish chovasa denafshe. And so presumably the Rav Papa's father knew that would not bring people who were going to hurt him. He was bringing people to help him, and that was in fact the intention of what they were saying. So we will pick up. Stay tuned.
How do we know he didn't pay them off to say that he was honest or not, or that he was honest?
Well, that's a good question, but we assume that when you get two people together, we're not going to make that assumption of being paid off, because you're absolutely right. There's no way. At the end of the day, in the Jewish system, it's very difficult for us to prove that that the person didn't pay the person off, pay the witnesses off. And what we have based on that, though, is the concept, of course, of false witnesses, where the false witnesses become obligated for whatever it is that they were trying to do to somebody else. So we have a punishment that's geared towards trying to prevent that. But you're absolutely right that it's that there's, at the end of the day, no way to be sure. But in any event, we're going to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf, when we'll pick up with the next Mishnah, which discusses what you can do with the found item while waiting for the owner to claim it. So look forward to continuing.
I want to ask an observation. When we discussed earlier about the machriz through 3 regalim, I wonder if this is a source in some sense for the custom of auctioning, where we would say going once, going twice, going thrice, sold.
That's a good question. Well, it could be that both of them have the same source, which is the concept of 3 being a chazaka. So that would be the direction that I would take your comment. But it could very well be that you're absolutely right, that that idea of saying going once, going twice, going 3 times has something to do with, is connected to the fact that we wait 3 holidays. Shkoff. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, bye now.
Thank you.